Hey guys, welcome back to another Vanguard video. Today we're doing a deck update on Drajeweled, including the new Rideline and cards from DZ-BT11. I'll be reviewing the entire Rideline, comparing it to the old one, and showing off both the Ignis hybrid and pure Magnus builds. I'll discuss why you should play the deck, which build you should be playing over the other, and of course a Mulligan guide at the very end. So why should you play Drajeweled? Well, it's a soul-oriented Dark States deck that allows you to soul blast 4 to 5 different grades to gain crit +1, while also sending your opponent's power to 0, stopping defensive triggers. This is also one of the few decks in Standard that can out defensive OT essentially. And the deck can also do up to 5 attacks per turn and 4 drives in a turn if your opponent's on grade 3 and you do have Guild Draw active, otherwise you're only doing 3 drives with Ignis. So here's the pros and cons between the two builds. Overall, Ignis is just the higher ceiling and better version of the deck, but does require you of course to find Ignis so that RNG is there. The pro for Ignis is that you have a lot of easy early aggression and tempo, which is really big in the format right now. You're also a lot less CB reliant, which is really big as well, basically only needing 1 CB to do 5 attacks in a turn. And Ignis just has a higher kill ceiling with that plus 15k to your front row, and also wiping your opponent's back row makes it really hard for them to basically kill you on the following turn. For Ignis' cons, I would say the biggest thing is definitely the RNG, that you have to find Ignis in order to have cards such as Varpula or Zagon be live, but of course you're playing 4 Ignis, you have 4 Battle and lots of cards to dig through your deck. It's also a little bit more expensive due to 4 Battle and a few other cards, but the price difference isn't that big, but it does make a little bit of a difference. For Magnus, I would say the pro is that you're not relying on fighting Ignis, you don't have that RNG, but you do have a little bit of a lower ceiling, but you have a lot more straightforward deck building options. For the cons for Magnus, I would say it has a lot worse early game, and you do need that 2 CB for 5 attacks, specifically for Litho. The other big con for Magnus is that you need Persona Ride to reach Ignis' ceiling. You also immediately lose to Vanguard resist skills such as Tsuku for example, or cards such as Urgula that make it impossible to target your opponent's Vanguard. Here's some quick stats for Drajeweled just to kind of give you an idea. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but for the most part, Drajeweled is a pretty mid-tier deck, I would say. I think it's a severely underrated deck in the hands of a really good player, but in terms of competitiveness and utility right now, it's a little bit on the lower side, and I do think ease of use is not really on the higher side either, because you do need to put some time into this deck and really know how to manage your soul and mulligan for pieces very, very well. Alright, now to talk about the Rideline. The pros of the Rideline is that you get costless soul filter from the check top 5 cards of your deck, while the trade-off is that you lose out on early aggression, potentially setting up the 4th different grade for Magnus' cost, and if you do put in Magnus or Ignis into soul, then you'll have the plus 5k front row active on turn 3. For the grade 2 luster, the auto is essentially the same. You get free soul charge 1, draw 1, but no on hit like the original. It also has the continuous to gain plus 5k power if you're on Magnus, if you have no other options for attackers. The new Rideline is for consistency, while the original Rideline is aggression. Most lists will be on the new Rideline to find pieces and have a grade 3 in soul without having to rely on any other effects. In this meta though, I would say being aggressive is more valuable, but it is simply preference. I'd recommend trying the Magnus Rideline first, then decide if you want to try out the original. You'll just find yourself not doing a lot in the early game unless you find Zagon Bifrons or the Ace unit. Lastly is the new grade 3 form of Drajeweled, aka Magnus. His first skill at the beginning of your ride phase gets you 2 free soul from drop, refilling soul the following turn before you ride Ignis from hand or Persona Ride. Meanwhile, the second auto at the beginning of your battle phase, if your soul has a card with Drajeweled in its card name, gives your front row units at the moment plus 5k power until end of turn, allowing you to match Ignis' firepower if you have Persona Ride. The last auto lets you soul blast 4 different grades to reduce your opponent's power to 0, with the rest of the skill being locked to your opponent being grade 3 or greater. If they are grade 3 or greater, you gain crit +1, and if this unit's crit increased, if either your damage zone has 4 or more cards or you Persona Road, you can choose a rear with Demonic Jewel Dragon and give it the red text ability to on attack discard a card from hand to set its drive to 1 and perform a drive check. In combination with Guild Draw, you can do 4 drives in a turn as this ability lets you perform Twin Drive. Now for the new cards from DZ-BT11. First off is Lavenajator. As a Demonic Jewel Dragon, it can perform a single drive with Magnus' red text, but it only does a single drive compared to Guildraw's twin. Alongside with Litho in the front row, you can do 5 attacks with 3 drives in a turn. The first auto is when discarded from hand during your turn, you can choose a card from drop and you may put it into soul. This dig effect makes him easy ride phase or Magnus skill discard fodder. It solves finding the grade 3 for Drajeweled on turn 3 for soul blasting 4 different grades, and also he's able to shove himself or any of your other pieces from drop into soul. This also makes getting the 7 soul for Quenlu very viable. His other skills are tied to the opponent being on grade 3 essentially. You can think of it being identical to Rakugor. On attack once per turn when attacking a grade 3 or greater unit, if your soul has 4 more cards with different grades, this unit gets plus 10k until end of turn. Then if you soul blast 4 more cards at the same time for the cost of your Vanguard with Drajeweled in its card name, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you cost counter +1 and stand this unit. So as you can see, the entire skill is tied to your opponent's grade. And as a grade 3, if buffed by Magnus' plus 5k to the front row, in combination with Quenlu, you can make an even 30k power, not accounting for any other power increase or boost. asking for 35k shield without using any normal sentinels, as Quenlu stops your opponent from guarding with any grade 1 or greaters from hand. Next is a Direful Doll that only supports Drajeweled Magnus, so you won't see it in Ignis hybrid lists. Karina's on place during the main phase lets you choose up to one card with grade less than or equal to Vanguard with a different name from herself to call to rear circle, but at the end of turn putting it back into soul. So she's costless calling of attackers out of soul for your kill turn, or alternatively cards such as Forkalore to increase your hand size. The second auto is on boost to choose up to one card from your drop, and if your soul does not have a card with the same grade as that card, put it into your soul. Since you can choose to activate this before Magnus is on attack as they're both at the same timing, if you're missing a grade for the Soul Blast effect, you can shove it to Soul first, then Soul Blast for different grades. You'll fill up your soul from boosting sides after Magnus swings, and then the Ride phase skill will increase your soul even further on the following turn. So here's my friend's Ignis hybrid list, and they prefer the OG Rideline to be more aggressive easily. They run 4 Bifrons as well as the Ace unit as the means to dig Ignis to hand/soul, since they lack the check top 5 of the new Rideline. In a pinch, they can also be used to dig for Quenlu. Zagon is just easy early game once you get Ignis, which you'll always mulligan for. If you use Zagon to call the Ace unit from soul, you actually make a full board to attack with if you're playing the old Rideline. The ceiling of the hybrid deck is just higher thanks to Varpula. It can save you a counterblast, making it so you really only need 1 CB and a restander to do 5 attacks going first or second. Also, if you have 2 restanders in the front row, you can instead use Varpula to restand a booster on sides such as Zagon, then CB2 to restand the front rows, making your kill turn even more lethal. Also note you can cut Magnus for another card such as the Venegator. It's a tech in list mostly to have another Drajeweled name for Magnus's plus 5k power, and as an option over Ignis to Persona Ride and perform 4 drives. The one of Quenlu is really easy to get off in Drajeweled once you have enough soul built up. 6 actually, as you can pay Quenlu's cost and then check for the condition. You can play 2 Quenlu, but most of the time it will be 1, making it so that your opponent cannot call grade 1 or greater cards from hands of Guardian Circle for the battle that rearguard attacked this turn. Putting this effect on a restanding rear provides value throughout the turn, especially when your rear is massive as you set the opponent to 0. In fact, you can double Quenlu in a turn, giving the effect to each front row restanding rear thanks to cards recalling it out of soul. It can make grade 3 set magic numbers like mentioned earlier, and no grade 1 or greater cards from hand means no normal sentinels, so this effect on a rear such as Gildral that's performing Twin Drive can rob games and catch players off guard. In hybrid lists, you run the Festival Elementaria as you can't play the triple drive one if you're on a grade 4, and you plan to ride Ignis on turn 4. Forbital is the Regulus piece of choice you'll see in most hybrid lists, as you can search Ignis and another card that'll plus you. If you already have Ignis on turn 3, it can call 2 of your insane grade 3s, Nocturcio can drill a card and fuel soul from drop for a CB, Gildral can rebuild the board and Twin Drive if you are rushed, and lastly the Venegator if you need another restander and your opponent is on grade 3. For triggers, the lineup is 3 20k effect fronts and 8 crits. The split of restand heals just because of that extra shield becoming 25k is super helpful in this meta. The over trigger is Idisfara, and this one here is the Koro version. It's just the most consistent OT you'll find in most Drajeweled lists, being good early game or late game, but you can try out Purple or Valnut if you want to experiment. You can also try a split of draws and fronts, going for 1 draw 2 fronts, or 2 fronts 2 draws and 7 crits. Draws in the late game can put you dangerously close to deck out though if the game goes on long enough, as although you have a lot of optional soul trudge with the hybrid build, it does happen occasionally. So here's a more normal list of what the Ignis hybrid list looks like with the new Rideline. This deck list uses 4 Forkalore as its counterblast list cycle draw 1 by retiring itself if you energy blasted 3 or more this turn, such as through the Thorsagor or the Energy Generator Act. The energy charge 1 when placed from hand can result in an extra draw or Gildral call if you do it 3 times. It's simple to call from soul to fill up your hand and find pieces. The rest of the deck is extremely similar, the only difference being the grade 3 ratios and no main deck Magnus, and again the Rideline is the new one instead of the old one. So here's the pure Magnus build my friend and I cooked. Because of how Karina works, the pure Magnus deck actually wants you to play like Michiru in the anime, swinging unboosted rear guards first, since you want to refuel your soul with grades you already soul blasted. The exception to this is if you don't have Karina on side. Eerie Fixer Dragon is played in here at 2. It's great to call in the early game when you discard it for the ride deck, or mid-battle phase as a booster when paying the red text cost for a grade 3 Demonic Jewel Dragon when it attacks. We wanted to fit in more copies, but cutting Impusa to 2 feels terrible, and Pusa is just necessary for how counterblast heavy this deck is, and it can also grab you Persona Ride from Soul or Restander to use on the next turn. Forkalore is also in here for the same reason, its condition is also easier than Philia. Due to how counterblast heavy this deck is, Amethyst is here at 1 copy for games to countercharge when you need the extra CB to do 5 attacks. Quenlu is included as a 1-up for cheesing out wins if it comes up. Last but not least, the Regulus piece of choice is Fire Regalis. Your other option is Twincast, and Forbital also works perfectly fine in Magnus as well. So to wrap things up, we have the Ignis Mulligan guide right here. Of course, your Regulus piece as well as the Ace unit are in the definite keep column. They just guarantee you either Ignis or find you a lot of your pieces very easily and just help you build a board. For Ignis, of course, is in the definite keep column because all of your effects resolve around it and you want it on turn 4. And of course, Bifrons or Forcolor here just for the early game, or basically just to make it harder for your opponent to guard. You can kind of just slam it behind Van or just make a column. For second priority, you have the cards that are active as soon as you find Ignis or if you already have it in hand, such as Varpula or Zagon, and your grade 3s since they're really easy to pitch for ride up or just to have them as an attacker on turn 3. For situational, we have Quenlu, which is just really easy to use in the late game and just cheese out games. And we also have Magnus in here as well, because I'm not sure if you're playing 1 or 0, or sometimes even 2 in some lists, but most of the time it'll be 1 or 0, because he is just an extra name, and at worst you can just pitch him, and then when you later pitch Lavenajator, you can just shove him from drop into soul to have Magnus's power ready. For the Magnus Mulligan guide, it's basically the same. You have your early game cards, the Regulus piece and Ace unit in the definite keep column. I think Eerie Fixer is also really easy to keep, even if you don't want to pitch him early to call out. For second priority, you have your really good pieces that you need that let you multi-attack, such as Impusa, Letho, as well as Karina and Lavenajator. For situational, it's basically the same reasoning. Quenlu can cheese out games, and you can always find it later, and you'll probably get it into soul anyways without the digging you're doing. This is there because you need that CC in the late game, or at worst, it's just a 20k shield in your deck. Magnus is in the situational column just because you do usually want to keep it because you can pitch it and shove it into soul easily off Karina or off Lavenajator's effect, but for the most part you don't really need it going second because you want to explode your opponent riding up, but going first you definitely want to keep it because it's kind of just win harder. So before I end off this video, I want to talk about the Mythisch of Purple Flames card vinyl. In case you haven't already seen it, I made a video and even talked about this card and multiple decklist samples already, but I'm going to give a TLDR basically summary of the card again. It frees up a lot of CB and energy for the effect. The first auto is pretty much energy charge 3 when placed from hand, so not when it's called out of soul. And the second skill is essentially Varpula, but you can't restand any back rows, but it is active on turn 3, which is really strong, and mostly this upgrades pure Magnus rather than Ignis, but I do think you still want to play Ignis for matchups where you would basically auto lose because you can't target their Vanguard, and Ignis targets the entire front row. So the really cool thing you can do with Cardfight is basically call it on turn 1 and energy charge 3, then you'll go up to 6 energy on the next turn from your energy generator, charge 1 for Forcolor, and you can E7 draw 1 on that turn and get all your Forcolors active on turn 2, which is a really strong aspect of this deck. Since the deck was already playing Forcolor, you might as well lean into this kind of deck building and aggression even harder, so you'll be filling up your hand and board even faster. The other really big thing is you can have another attacker in the front row that isn't necessarily one of your CB1 restanders. So for example, you can have Lethal Sagor as well as the Ace unit in the front row, or any other card you want to experiment with in Drajeweled. So yeah, that's pretty much your TLDR on what the Mythisch changes for Drajeweled as well as the deck building. Alright, so that pretty much does it for Drajeweled. As usual, resources are in the description, and if you did enjoy, like and subscribe, share this video around. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in another Vanguard video.